You're listening to Clear and Loud, a show about finding meaning and purpose on the other side of shifting beliefs. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Today, my guest is Freeman Voyles, a young Catholic writer, podcaster, and content creator who's carving out a really unique space in the cultural conversation. She has a platform called Kneutrality, spelled with a K, where she explores with refreshing candor topics like faith, sexuality, and various cultural tensions. In a world of polarized extremes, Freeman is creating space for independent thinkers who want deeper conversations beyond the typical talking points. Freeman, welcome to the Clear and Loud podcast. It's great to have you.
Josh, it is so good to be here. I've been a fan of yours since day one, truly.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well, I was prepping for this conversation and I went on to Threads. For those of you who have forgotten what Threads is, it's Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I asked a question that sparked some interest. So here's what I wrote. I said, I'm interviewing a woman on my podcast who is devoutly Catholic and married, committed to a traditional conservative sexual ethic, but who's
Mhm.
also pushing back against modesty culture and controlling views of the female body. Is there a term to describe this? What would you call it?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I got some reactions.
Hmm.
The responses were diverse. Some of the replies included, she's a feminist,
Yep.
healthy, reasonable. My
Yep.
favorite was, it's called freedom.
Mhm.
The funny thing is, a lot of people were just annoyed with me for asking for a term. So they're like, why do you need a term? Why do you need to label everything? That
Oh,
kind of a thing.
gosh.
But I asked this question because I feel like what you're doing, what you're putting out into the world, doesn't fit neatly into existing categories. And that's what part of what makes it so compelling to me and
Mm.
I think fascinating. But to start our conversation off, I want to ask you the question, if you had to pick a label or, for yourself, how would you describe yourself?
I mean, I'm first and foremost a child of God. So I'm not interested in, putting my identity in a name or a title or even a job or even my marital status or
Mm,
my children or lack thereof. None of that matters to me because ultimately I'm a child of God, and that's pretty undefinable. There's no way to actually put that in a box, and that's exactly
mm,
why I created this space, because we constantly put people in boxes. And that's our nature. That's sometimes
yeah,
usually that's a good thing, right? Because it's like, what am I supposed to expect from this person? How do I handle this? But ultimately, boxes are impossible to put people in. So, yeah,
yeah,
I'm okay not being in a box
I
or
like
having a
that.
word.
So I guess part of the impulse for you with even the work you're doing is to break out of a lot of the kind of pre-established boxes that are out there of
Yeah,
what you're allowed to believe and the mixture of ideas that you're allowed to adhere to.
absolutely. Because I think there has to be a space where people can just be. And
Mm,
I've learned that I was actually like thinking about this yesterday and like meditating on it. Like, my existence, your existence is enough. It's not
mm,
about what you bring to the world, it's not about what you contribute to a conversation or to your relationships. Like, your essence, the fact that you exist, is enough.
mm.
And so that gives me a lot of peace when I am trying to think about like my audience or the type of person that I want to bring in.
Yeah.
It's like, we're all just human beings. You
Mm.
know what I mean?
Yeah, I love that. I'd love to hear the background on
Yeah.
the name that you chose for your website, Neutrality.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? What inspired you to create this platform?
Okay. So I started this platform exactly like 18 months ago. Um, and I created the space because initially, I really wanted it to be just a Christian conservative space that is also critical of the right, and especially today's right.
Hmm.
I was very involved in, and I'm still involved in, right wing politics. I love my conservative ideology. I'm probably never going to abandon it. Very concerned about the right today. I'm obviously very concerned about the left. So I created it really to be like an ideologically compassionate space because
Hmm.
there was no Christian conservative space that I was involved in that didn't violate my conscience, whether it was bullying, internet like feuds, you
Hmm.
know, like choosing sides, um, just negativity. So I created neutrality because neutrality does not mean not having an opinion. Neutrality
Mm.
means not aiding either side in conflict. That's actually the
Wow.
definition of the word.
That's good. I've
So,
never thought of it in that way. That's very
yeah.
specific and different than the kind of
Yeah.
immediate thing that you picture. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not about not having an opinion. Like, it means being, like, inwardly passionate, but
Mhm.
outwardly neutral, outwardly
Mm.
understanding and, like, absorbing and compassionate and welcoming, but not welcoming in a way that's like, "I don't actually know who you are, because 'cause I'm trying to be so welcoming that I'm not even gonna talk about what I think about the world."
Right.
It's welcoming in a way that's like, "This is what I think, this is me, this is my experience, and I want to behold you and your experience and who you are."
Freeman, how old are you? Do you mind if I ask?
I'm
I've
23.
I was gonna say, I feel like you're like the age of my kids, which
Well, how
which
old are
is
your
part of
kids?
my oldest is 24, and then I have a 25, 23, and 19.
Oh,
Yeah. So
cool,
you're
that's
you're right
cool,
in the
that's
mix there.
awesome. I love that.
Well, part of the reason I'm so excited to talk to you is I'm so interested in the way different generations
Mhm.
are engaging with like the big ideas
Yeah,
of the world, and I
yeah.
feel like you're coming at this from a unique angle. Like even to hear you say like I'm coming from a,
Mhm,
more conservative
mhm,
viewpoint politically, but I didn't
mhm,
like,
mhm.
these aren't your words, the
Yeah,
vibe or
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
approach or
absolutely.
those types of things. What did that involvement look like for you? Was it
Mm.
participating in political campaigns or
Oh,
like what
yeah,
you're still young, so I'm just curious
yeah.
what that background was.
Yeah, so it involved, like, so in college, I was very involved in, like, anti-abortion things, very
Yeah.
pro-family things, really trying to get, like, resources on campus for pregnant and parenting students. That meant going up and lobbying against bills, like, at the Capitol, against bills that would make abortion available throughout all 9 months, things like that. There was a bill I lobbied on that was like, should women even be allowed to see their ultrasound? And the left was saying no, women should not even be allowed to see an ultrasound when they go in to receive an abortion. I, of course, was advocating that they should be able to see the
Mm.
ultrasound because that can be transformative. Um, so, yeah, I was very excited about the conservative movement. I actually was excited about Trump initially. And after just getting in tune with like my conscience, I said, I can't do this anymore, but there was no lifeboat out of it,
Wow. Yeah.
So I was like, I guess I'll have to be the lifeboat.
Wow. So has
Yeah.
this left you in kind of a lonely space, or do you feel like you're attracting community and engagement where you feel like you've got people around you?
I think I am attracting that because fundamentally, I believe everything the Catholic Church believes in. I believe in, the right to life from conception to natural death. That's why I have a pen pal who's on death row. I'm again, very against the death penalty. I'm very pro immigration and workers' rights and the environment. Fundamentally, like I'm a Catholic. Like
Right.
I am like Roman Catholic. And it's funny because like even when I was developing my worldview, I wasn't Catholic, but it
Oh,
happened to
that's what I
be.
wanted to ask you. That's so you converted to Catholicism.
Yeah, I did towards the end of high school, but it just so happened to be that, like, my conscience was also in alignment with the Catholic Church, and that was really convenient because I was becoming Catholic, so
Right.
that's the audience.
Did you grow up in the Protestant church or some other tradition?
No, I grew up in Alabama, but I'm actually very grateful that I did not grow up in the Bible Belt Christian world, because I think It was really nice. I really liked being able to develop my own worldview later in
Yeah.
life. I mean, I know I don't have to tell you all of the toxic, stuff that goes on in the very Southern Christian
Mm.
world. But no,
We
but to
both
answer
have
your
Alabama roots. My dad's family's from Alabama
Oh,
originally,
really?
so isn't that funny? Yeah.
Oh, that is really funny, yeah. Um,
So you grew up not going to church? Like, what was your
that's right. Yeah. Mhm,
interesting, and so then in high school, you were
mhm,
exposed to the Catholic faith
yeah.
and you became Catholic.
Well, yes. I mean, to be fair, like, whenever I would visit my grandparents, they would take me to their Catholic church, and I loved it there.
Right.
But no, it wasn't like every weekend, like the 4 of us with, like, the golden retriever going to church, no. And in a lot of ways, like I said, I'm grateful that I didn't have that.
Well, that is such an interesting path, and it does kind of help me understand how you would have these deep convictions from your faith,
Mhm.
but then also this like willingness to push back on some of the cultural, I don't even know
Yeah.
what to
Yeah.
describe it, things that go along with a certain political viewpoint, for example. Like you're thinking for yourself,
Yeah.
and going against the flow of your own tribe a little bit in a way
Oh,
that's
yeah.
really, really fascinating.
For sure.
Um,
Because
I I want to come back to trying to explain your platform. You have, you
Mhm.
have got a podcast, you've got a website, and so on.
Mhm.
But Instagram is a place where
Yeah.
it seems to me that like
Mhm.
you really embody a lot of your values. I don't know what your background is. Maybe you're just like a classic Gen Z person. You're
I
just good
guess.
at like the
I guess
visual
so.
side of things, but you communicate visually really well.
Uh-huh.
You've
Thank
curated a
you.
really great feed and so on.
Thank
But how
you.
would you describe your Instagram presence to someone who's never seen it?
Mhm.
If you were to say like, here's what you're going to find on my Instagram. This is what it looks like. I just would love to
Yeah.
hear what you're trying to communicate visually and how it connects to your broader message.
Yeah. So my goal, at least, this is what I'm going for, has always been to create a space that is calming, inviting, peaceful, honest, authentic, aesthetic, definitely has a sex appeal. I've always loved, Europe and travel, and so I've really kind of wanted to embody like a European lifestyle with American, I guess, values, but
Mm,
honestly, I'm not sure what that means anymore. Um, so yeah, I guess yeah, calm, peaceful, inviting, warm. I want to say neutral, but that sounds like I'm trying to plug myself or like tag myself. But yeah, a neutral space, really. Like I use neutral tones and, I don't capitalize a whole lot because I want to stand out as like a very low key, chill vibe.
right. That's a great description. I mean,
Thank you.
I don't know how I could improve on just kind of trying to verbally describe an
Mhm,
Instagram feed, but I
mhm.
definitely think that you nailed it on that.
Thank you.
I want to shift from your personal journey
Mhm,
to the cultural philosophy that you're developing through neutrality,
mhm.
and I'm particularly interested in your perspective on sexuality.
Yeah.
Um, and you even highlighted that when you're describing your Instagram, like there's
Yeah.
sex appeal,
Yeah, for
which is,
sure.
I think, the piece that for me, it's like kind of surprising
Mhm.
in a way. And maybe this is just like my generation's version of
Yeah.
faith, or
Yeah.
again, different tradition from the Protestant evangelical
Mhm, mhm.
world, but like the way that, my generation was trying to push back against the culture and its
Mhm.
use of sexuality or misuse of
Mhm,
sexuality,
mhm,
those types of things.
mhm.
It was a very different like vibe and approach than you're taking. So your approach feels so like a little shocking to me. Like, whoa, this
Yeah.
person is Catholic. They
Yeah.
have all of these different views, but then there's this sex appeal
Mhm,
part that's thrown into like,
mhm.
the platform of Instagram.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how all of that fits together. And is that surprising to you? Does it shock other people or like
Yeah.
what's the reaction?
Well, it surprises a lot of people more than I thought it would. Like, I
Hmm.
thought it was completely consistent with Christianity and especially Catholicism. Not that those are separate. I hate saying those. But especially Catholicism, because we have images of like Mary breastfeeding. We have like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo. We have these
There's like a
beautiful.
place for the sensual in the Catholic faith.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And like we talk about sex a lot. Like my marriage counseling was like 100% sex. It was like this is heaven, by the way. Sex is heaven. This is the closest thing you're ever going to get to heaven, is having
This
sex
was
and
like the
having an
counseling that you
orgasm.
and your husband did before you got married.
Yes. Yes. So like it to
Wow.
me is completely consistent that I would like not wear a bra and I would walk around Europe drinking wine and going to churches. Like that obviously.
I
Obviously.
love it. You're blowing my purity culture mind as you
I
share this,
know,
but that's what I love about your platform. It's
and
great.
that's what everybody says, but I'm like, I mean, do you really think Mary wore a bra? Hello? No. No, she probably didn't. I'm sure she wore something, but like modesty is about like where your heart is. And like
Mm,
I mean, if I were to fall and crack my head in a shower and my neighbor were to come and like have to save me, would I be immodest? Would he be like lusting after me? I seriously doubt it. Like, they're just it's all in your heart. It's all in how you perceive the world, how you perceive yourself. Obviously, there are ways of, inviting lust. And to anybody who says I'm inviting lust, I say, you don't know me. Like
mm.
anybody that sends me like a lustful message, I immediately am like, tell me where you're coming from with that. Like, cause I want to understand you, but the way you're looking at me is not right. You are not seeing me as a child of God. You are not seeing me as a sister, as somebody's daughter, as somebody's wife. Like, men are allowed to enjoy the female body. And women should enjoy the male body, and we should enjoy ourselves and one another. But it's just a state of the heart, really.
What I so appreciate about the way that you're thinking about this is it's like a direct pushback against a
Yeah.
lot of the ideas of purity culture, which I have, when I was younger, I was a huge
Mhm.
advocate for. I wrote
Mhm.
about these things. I came from a church where we created this was the pastor's wife, but it was endorsed by the pastors. This long modesty checklist of all these, how
Mhm.
much things should cover you. You
Yeah.
definitely were wearing a bra. You were putting
Yeah.
like band-aids on your nipples to make sure they weren't showing through. Like
Yeah.
all these very specific rules and a big emphasis on really a pressure on women to say you're not to cause your brothers to stumble. Like if you
Yeah.
do anything that reminds them that you have breasts, that shows
Yeah.
off your body in any way, you're causing them to stumble. That's on you. And there's
Mhm.
also often a double standard for men, for sure.
Mm.
But this pressure, and so that was the world that I've come out of. I'm now
Mhm.
like critiquing. I'm apologizing for,
Mhm.
but it's sometimes hard to find people who are pushing back against that, who are still very committed to a
Yeah.
Christian worldview and
Yeah.
holding on to their faith. So I could line up people to interview who are like, I've left the
Right.
Christian
Right.
faith. I'm
Right.
pushing against,
Right.
back against, purity culture. I'm posting boudoir photos on my
Yeah.
Instagram, whatever, all
Yeah.
those kinds of
Yeah.
things. What I'm like mind blown about with you is strongly committed to your faith in Christ, the Catholic
Mhm.
tradition, a theological framework for that. And you're not just talking about pushing back against this controlling, wrong view of modesty. You're actually embodying it.
Mm.
You're
Mm.
posting things where, like you said, you're not wearing a bra, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's purposely sensual sex
Yeah.
appeal, however you want to put that.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing that is, so different and revolutionary from the world that I
Yeah.
came from. And I appreciate that, but I imagine it it puts you in a difficult position, I guess you
Mhm.
could say, to kind of
Mhm.
get heat from a lot of different angles. Like even the fact that people will write you, like you say, a lustful message,
Mhm.
and instead of just blocking them or being like, you pervert or
Yeah.
whatever, you're actually trying to interact with people.
Mhm.
What is that like for you to be in that place where you're holding your faith and you're interacting with lots of different reactions to kind of the sensual, attractive content that you're posting?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, I try to do everything in prayer. I mean, I'm sure there are times that I've picked up my phone without, like, praying, or, the first thing I go to look at is, like, if there's anything new, rather than praying, but I really try to do everything in prayer, and I've told other people this, but as long as I can rest at night knowing that I have given my heart to God. I have told, like, if he wants me to delete it, if I heard him tell me to delete the account right now, I would. But I seriously believe that he told me to create this account not only for the sex appeal, but honestly, the more I like do this, the more I'm thinking that he does want me to lean into that and give men and women a space to appreciate God's design. Hello. Like, the more I pray about it, the more I do feel convicted to keep doing this because it's so controversial and it's just so weird, but, like, I love hearing from men, women who are, like, struggling or, who
Mm,
maybe they're engaged and he really is trying to, like, wait until marriage. Like, I can talk to that. I can speak to that. I had I'm not gonna tell you. But I've had some wild, wild stuff that people are really, really struggling, really overcoming, and, like,
mm,
why would I judge that? Like, God has not held that against me, so why
mm,
would I hold that against someone, especially if they're coming to me in faith and in honesty and in vulnerability? Like, the process of getting something out into the open is so healing. It's something I've needed, and if God has provided that for me, who would I who would I be to block someone for
mm,
trying to confess something? I believe in confession. I believe in going to confession.
mm.
If somebody confesses something, assuming it's not like I need to call 911,
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
who would I be to not give them that
Mm.
space? It would be
So
hypocritical fundamentally.
what I hear you saying is by you being in this unique space of adhering to faith, wanting to honor God in every part of your life, including sexuality, but believing that there is a place for
Mhm.
a God approved, I don't know if that's the best
Yeah,
phrase,
yeah,
like
yeah,
place
yeah.
for sensuality and those types of things. You're inviting interaction that's really unique in, let's just say, the social media
Mhm,
world in some ways. Because when I think about it, you have all kinds of accounts where women are,
mhm,
showing their bodies, their
mhm,
OnlyFans models, whatever,
mhm.
that kind of a thing. There's a
Yeah.
very distinct purpose there. Then you have people that are creating content that is, here's what God's plan is for, fill in the blank part of life.
Mhm,
And there's no kind of overlap where there's in
mhm,
one you're a customer and somebody wants your money,
mhm,
or
mhm,
there's
mhm,
exploitation taking place, and in another there's just here's a discussion of religious norms and practices and so on, and there are all these right and wrong ways to do things, and that can be like an unsafe place to be honest, because I'm going
mhm.
to be judged if I'm honest
Yeah,
about who I really am.
totally.
And you're kind of in this unique space where you're very comfortable with who you are, and you're putting yourself out there in a way that's tasteful, but is,
Yeah,
sensual in certain
yeah.
ways. And that's inviting this honesty and interaction with people that they might not feel they could have with a lot of other people.
It really does, and I never put a sign like, "Hey, send me your weird fetishes," but Lord knows they do, and that's what you're saying, like, most people won't understand it, but the people that do, like, really do.
Hmm.
It's mostly middle-aged men, but I'm working on
Well, so
that.
this is an interesting thing. Like, even when I was talking to you about doing this interview, I was like, "Hey,
Yeah,
would you like to
yeah,
have your husband on
yeah.
the call as well?" Because obviously, this is kind of a unique
Mhm,
conversation. And you were saying, he doesn't need to. We have kind of these
yeah,
established things. But what is that like for him to see you kind
mhm,
of creating this ministry, for lack of a
yeah.
better word? What is that dynamic like for him to support you in that?
I mean, well, he's my photographer, so there's nothing that goes up online that he doesn't know about, and
Right.
isn't fully understanding of. I mean, he is active. He is active at every single comment, every like. He'll tell me like, "Oh, somebody from The Chosen, somebody who was an actor from The Chosen just followed you," you know? And like he is very, very active, very
That's cool.
involved. Um, but he has been so good. He really reminds me of Saint Joseph because he constantly says like, "You are God's before you are mine."
Mm,
So, who am I to say if God has put this on your heart? Who am I to tell you you can't do that? As long as we are Christian, as long as we have a Christian marriage, you are God's before you're mine. So, he's been amazing,
that's
strong,
awesome.
supportive, understanding. Yeah.
So back to the philosophy that undergirds all of this. In one of your posts, you wrote, somehow Americans have managed to find a way of being hypersexual yet regressive.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a really fascinating observation. Can you unpack more what you mean by that?
Mm. Okay. Here's an example. Americans are hypersexual because we will have a Hooters billboard, you know, when you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
take your kids to soccer practice. But we're regressive because there are places you would get kicked out of for breastfeeding.
Hmm.
And this is the same society
Mm-hmm.
that would rather see a woman as a centerfold than providing nourishment for her child. That's an example of what I mean.
Yeah, that's a great example. What are other places that you encounter that kind of hypersexualization yet regressive kind of mindset, even as you're interacting with people who are following you and
Yeah. Um, well, you know, calling me a whore for one is hypersexual. I mean, I think
is
that's
that a
completely
consistent thing that you get? You get people angrily saying those
yeah.
kinds of things to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Like Christians, you know. And for one, that's extremely hypersexual because I'm not talking about anything inappropriate. Also, that in its essence is inappropriate and evil. Like, so that's extremely sexualizing to
Mhm.
call me that and degrading and
Yeah.
objectifying while also being regressive, while also saying I'm wrong or doing something problematic by having a body and wearing, you know, a bathing suit at the beach. That's
Right.
another
Right.
example of this weird dichotomy, you know?
I'm sorry you've had to deal with that, Freeman.
Thank
That's
you.
that's it's the internet and the anonymity of it can be such a brutal, ugly
Yeah.
place, and I
Yeah,
hope
I
that's
know you
that's
know
not
that.
wearing you down too much.
Thank you.
Um, how has your Catholic faith evolved through this journey of finding your voice? Are there aspects of traditional Catholic teachings that you've had to wrestle with or reinterpret, or have you found kind of the basis for what
Yeah,
you're doing in it?
I have found that, like, my faith is actually way more sexual than I thought. Like, when you think about communion, like, going up to receive Holy Communion, I mean, you're becoming one with God, with Jesus. And as a
Hmm.
woman, like me and Jesus are becoming one, not sexually, not sexually, but the union is it is sexual because sexuality is a desire to be one with someone or you know, or with
Mm.
that person or with even a community or whoever's like sexuality is not just what happens in the bedroom. It's your ability to connect with and understand the people around you. So I
Well, that
found
is
that
that's a place where I feel like the Catholic Church is so ahead of Protestant theology. I have a limited, very limited understanding of this, but the
mhm,
theology of the body,
yeah,
that kind of
mhm,
teaching and insight, I think has such it's more well-rounded, I would say, when it
mhm.
comes to understanding the sensual visual the sexual nature of life.
Yeah, and, like, you think about something like, you know, birth control. That puts a barrier between 2 people, whether it's an emotional barrier or a physical barrier. The Catholic theology says, like, "No, this needs to be, like, full and total." And so, it's another example of, like, regressive, but also, like, objectifying to say that we need birth control or to say that that's good or that I need to be protected from my spouse. Like, I don't need protection from my spouse. Like, so Catholic teaching is no, you don't. Go get it. Go after it. Like, go do that. Like, just like Adam and Eve did. Just like Adam and Eve did. You think they had IUDs? No. Like, and they created the whole world, and we are grateful to them. They're our first parents. So, Catholic teaching is like, it's raunchy.
Well, I heard one of your podcasts. I really respected this as you were getting, this negative feedback from people because of the kinds of things that you post on Instagram. You actually took your Instagram feed to
Yeah.
multiple people, I think including your local priest
Mhm. Mhm.
and different Catholic, teachers and so on. And you actually were saying, what do you think? Do you
Yeah.
think God would be happy
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
my
Mhm.
social media presence? So I just love the way that you're really trying to incorporate even your online world and the what you're sharing with your
Mm,
faith. I think that's so powerful.
thanks.
um, I want to ask you the question, what does modesty mean to you now, and how do you respond to those critics who are saying that your content contradicts their understanding of modesty?
Yeah, I feel much more protective of the idea of modesty
Hmm.
because I see, I see men, who wear like gold chains and like baggy pants, and I'm like, I think that's immodest because it's the desire for attention. But like, if I go to church in like a long dress, no bra, and a veil, like and I'm like fundamentally there to like sit in the back and pray like before, during, and after mass, first when they're last to leave. That's modest. Any woman that, sits in the back and is like, whether or not she's wearing a bra, it doesn't matter. Like, that is so modest. She's there on her own time, on her own accord, alone. You know what I mean? Or versus a
Mm.
woman who, and I've seen this too, shows up in a beautiful dress and asks her boyfriend to take pictures of her praying in church. Like, modesty, I'm very, very protective of this phrase
Mm.
because I mean, we have a lot of immodesty, but it also has to start with us. Like, as Christians, where is our immodesty? Where are we objectifying ourselves and one another? Like, where are we interested in the pomp and the glamour? And, you know, do we lust after houses in our neighborhood or someone else's possessions? Like, I do,
Yeah.
that's lust. And it's immodest to, you know, to try to show off your possessions or to try to show off your health or your good looks. It's more than just physical. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like it's like I would be immodest if I made a podcast about like how thorough my prayer routine is or something. Like, that's immodest. That's self-idolization. And
Mm.
I'm very, very protective, and I try to be thoughtful about what that word really means.
I love how you're broadening the definition of it. And I definitely think that in some ways it's easier to make it hyper focused on
Yeah.
certain parts of our bodies so that we don't have to deal with those deeper heart
Yeah.
level issues that you're describing.
Yeah, because
Um,
if we just narrow it down to like physically what you're wearing, then like we can just check it off.
right.
But that's not how sin works. Like, sin is not something you can check off. Sin is something that like every day you are reworking, and it's not just the physical or what's on the surface. It's what's happening in your mind, in your heart, in your soul, in your nous.
Mm. Another phrase that I've heard you use on your podcast and different contexts is this phrase, more sensuality, less sex.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I just think if we had more sensuality as a culture, if we, I don't know, had more topless beaches, or we had, afternoons to take a siesta, like, that's sensual. If more people went to the beach and like, went on dates, married people don't freaking go on dates anymore. So more sensuality, like, you know, get wine and cheese, like, go on a picnic, just embrace sensuality. I think that would really help this hypersexual culture because
Mm. So when you talk about sensuality, you're talking
yeah,
about the enjoyment of
romanticize
all the
life.
senses and
Yeah,
the beauty of, the
yeah,
grass that you're sitting in that you feel. Like there's so many
yeah,
different ways that sensuality is experienced and expressed.
and intimacy, yeah,
And would you say that because we don't approach life in that way, the romance of it, the beauty of it,
yeah,
even the appreciation of physical beauty in
mhm,
others,
mhm.
that it somehow like manifests itself in this like weird twisted sexual focus on things? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because if there's no outlet for sexual energy, no healthy outlet for sexual energy, it's no wonder we have like 85% of men watching porn, and then it becomes worse and worse, and their addictions become worse and worse, and then they become rapists. I mean,
Because that's kind of like the only place where
yeah,
they can have
exactly,
this like very sensual for them, like a very sensual experience.
exactly.
So maybe bringing these ideas that you're sharing down to a, a real life, daily life kind of practice.
Mhm,
What does living that philosophy out for you, just in your own personal life? More sensuality, less sex.
mhm.
What's that look like day to day? Are there practices or boundaries that you've found helpful in your life?
Mm. Yeah, I think, like, starting the morning early with prayer, maybe going for a walk or yoga, exercising, enjoying, not having earbuds when I go for a jog. That's one way that I'm,
Mm,
like, increasing, like, my senses. Um,
I love that.
yeah, like, my husband and I have gotten better about having, like, 3-hour-long dinners where we just, like, sit and talk, and there's no, like, "Where are we off to next?" It's like,
Mm,
this is gonna be an event. Yeah, reading, right? Reading next to a window, like, getting to know the people around you really well. Like, I do Uber, and so whenever I have a passenger, I try to pray for them, every single person, and then, like, trying to talk to them. I had a really good conversation with a guy who works at, like, a halfway house or something. So, like, yeah, inviting intimacy, and it's not, like, pervy to have intimate conversations with someone.
mm.
Um and yeah, loving your spouse, doing kind things for Mother's Day, being thoughtful with that. I love going to daily mass. Um, yeah,
That's an amazing list.
thanks.
I love the specifics of how you're and how intertwined it is with all different parts of your life.
Mm.
Um, well, we're talking about religion, so why not talk about politics? I'm really
Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious your experience. This is a very unique
Mm,
moment in American history, in world history. Trump is uh,
mhm,
shaking things up on so many different levels. And I'm just wondering what that's been like for you as a person of faith, where a lot of at least evangelical Christians are oftentimes more
mhm.
supportive of his politics and MAGA and so on. What was that process like for you to at one point be supportive, change, and then how did that impact you relationally to be at a different place? What do you see that
Yeah,
process look being like?
yeah, so I was very excited about Trump. I even door knocked for him in college, because I
Was this
wanted
his first was this his
yeah,
first,
his first
yeah,
term.
2016, yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted, like, yeah, why not shake it up? Romanticize life, sure, let's shake things up. Um, but I really, like, my conscience, I could feel it, like, irritated every
Mm,
every time, like, I would hear him talk or the things he would say, I kind of had to rationalize a little bit, but it's for a good cause, it's for a good cause. He's more than his Twitter feed, whatever. But then I got a letter in the mail. This was like, and I had planned, I didn't know who I was going to vote for the second term, but I got a letter in the mail from the Trump administration, and I actually have it in my closet if you want me to get it. But it's a photo of him and his arms are outstretched and he has a halo, like a halo effect. His arms are outstretched and it's like below him. And I don't know if it's because like I've taken photography courses, but that is so obviously like self-idolization and blasphemy. Like it literally looks like he's on a cross. Like he's like he has created himself as Jesus and he has embraced that people do call him like the savior, the second coming. I heard a girl at my work like refer to him as the second coming. And when I was looking up, these things, I realized that he embraces it and he's okay with that and he hasn't shut down those claims.
Mm.
And that, like, I don't know. I don't know why that was the moment. But yeah, that was the moment for me when I got that in the mail. It was an ad for him that solidified my vote against him.
Wow.
Yeah.
So and it's only, I mean, that was back in 2020 or something. Like it's only gotten more extreme. I like, what was your reaction to the AI image of him as the Pope, for example? Like, how does that,
Ooh.
is that different because it's not portraying himself as Christ?
Honestly, yeah, it's different because I thought it was like a stupid meme, honestly, and I
Yeah.
didn't even really comment on it on my social media because I was like, yeah,
Doesn't
he's
deserve
this
extra
is what he
commentary.
does. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like I think it's funny though to see like my evangelical friends and like Protestant friends being really offended by it when I'm like the Catholic and I'm like, of
They
course,
were they were offended by they were
Yeah,
offended by him
yeah.
doing
I
that?
had
Oh, interesting.
some like evangelical Protestants being like, this is blasphemy, this is so hurtful. And I'm like, well, what else is new? I mean,
Mm.
yeah.
Have you lost relationships because you're not on the same page politically, or is
No.
there, okay,
No, not because we're
that's
not on
good.
the same page politically. Honestly, I try to like my podcast is my time to rant, but when I'm with family and friends, like I really try not to unless it directly affects me. Like my pen pal, that directly affects me.
Hmm.
And obviously that's policy related because he's on death row. Like, and
Wow.
I would rather him not be shot in the head or electrocuted or stabbed. But anyway, sometimes it does get a little dicey, because when it does affect us as individuals, taxes might affect a friend. Um, yeah, like I have a friend who I think, actually, yeah, I have a friend who, I think is very pro-choice. But it's not like she's asked me to drive her to an abortion clinic or anything. So that hasn't affected our friendship in any
Mm.
in any way.
Where do you get the most pushback when it comes to like your online persona? And I'm just curious how you stay grounded. What is it,
Mhm.
more from conservatives? Is it more from progressives? Is it equal? What's it
No,
look like?
it's definitely like conservative Protestants who, yeah, like you're saying, believe that I'm like inviting lust and I'm going to hell. I have had some very loud Catholics, but for the most part, I think Catholics are on board with like the art, Europe, you know,
Right.
wine, and like, but there are Protestants who are not on board with any of those at
That's
all.
true. That
So,
is true. Yeah. You just hit 10,000 followers on Instagram.
mhm,
Congrats on building
thank
that in the
you,
last 18 months. That's
thank
amazing.
you.
Um, how do you think the algorithm is shaping who finds your content? And I'm like asked this question to lots of people because I think it's just such a
That's a good question.
weird world that we live in, in terms of like the things that are fed to us, what we're
Yeah.
drawn to. Um, has that audience been what you expected, or is there something that's like surprising or interesting on that front?
Honestly, it's been just really thoughtful people, and I'm very grateful for that. It started off as not so well-meaning people. It was mostly like people that just found me attractive, and I actually ended up removing like 1,000 followers because I was like, I would rather have a smaller audience than, a smaller, more thoughtful audience than a
Right.
large audience that's not actually really like conditioned to think in this
Mm,
way.
hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm really happy with the audience that I've gotten. I wish they were a little more active. Sometimes I see like 1,000 people will view my story, but I got like 50 likes on a post, and I just don't understand that. But I get that weird things happen. But yeah, I love my audience. I really do.
What is have you had opportunities or, with your audience to really engage other women your age? Or like what do you feel like your,
Mm.
I don't know if burden is the right word. Do you feel
Mhm.
more of a sense of like, I want to interact with guys and be this like feminine energy that's
Mm.
healing, some
Mhm.
part of them? Or do you want to like lead women in viewing their bodies and
Yeah.
these different topics a certain way? Or is it both?
Yeah, I initially wanted it to be primarily for women, for conservative Christian women who were not on board with the conservative right media.
Hmm.
Um, but as you know, like that's not quite the route it took. So now it is mostly men who, yeah, appreciate that feminine energy, want to have conversations in a healthy way about sexuality, about faith. I have a guy in Finland who was like initially a little bit hostile toward Christianity, and now he like
Hmm.
bought a Bible. Um,
Interesting. Wow.
so that's huge. But a lot of the women are young. Most of the women that follow me are young, very thoughtful. But yeah, also like trying to find that balance of embracing their sexuality while also adhering to, our beliefs.
Yeah. Where are you hoping all of this will go? Like, um, do you
Mm,
want to write? Do you want to
mm.
speak? Like, what are some of your aspirations?
Well, I have been working on a liturgical planner, which I just did because I wanted one, and so I made it.
Okay. For all
um,
for all of the ex-evangelicals or evangelicals that are
okay.
listening to this, how would you explain a liturgical planner?
Okay, so every weekend, every Sunday, we have specific readings that we do. So, like, the fourth Sunday after Easter is always something about, I don't know, charity. I don't really know.
Hmm.
But so our Catholic, like, liturgical calendar is very specific in
Mm-hmm.
those ways. So I created one that has the readings so that you can bring this journal to church and have the readings with you. And you can have already read them, and it'll have reflections that I've written about them, and, space to write down like things you need to bring to confession. Maybe your favorite hymn that you heard this weekend,
Mm.
or some notes during the homily that that really resonated with you that maybe you want to think about later. A space to pray for your friends, or just, logistically, like, what have I got going this week? So
Very cool. So you're selling this
thanks.
right now? Like people can
I
can buy
am.
this
Yeah,
on your
yeah.
website?
Yeah. Kneutrality.com.
Fantastic. Okay. Awesome. What are some of the topics? We've been very focused on issues of sexuality and those kinds of things, but you're talking about a lot of different things on your Instagram
Mhm.
and so on. What are some of the things that are getting you fired up, that you're thinking about, that you're wanting to interact with others about?
Hmm. I mean, everything we're talking about, I have a lot to say on. The thing that really, really gets me energized is the idea that, like, somebody feels safe
Hmm.
in on my space or in my platform, like, whether it's a trans Catholic who I actually have interviewed her, or like,
Incredible.
yeah, or a lesbian Catholic, or a bisexual Catholic, or, somebody who, when they first found my space, they were an atheist and they didn't believe in faith. And this is not about converting people, truly. I'm using these examples as people that have found not only solace in my space, but have also
Hmm.
learned something. But that's
Can
not to
I?
say that, go ahead.
Well, no. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just am curious. Do you have space? We keep using that word for Catholic, trans,
Mhm.
LGBTQ people? Like, does that fit into your framework? What's your view of that?
Yeah, I mean, I am a Pope Francis gal, so, like, the way that he embraced and loved the LGBTQ community is as much as I want to. I mean, he was
Mm,
often criticized for embracing the community. I don't plan to, like, change my beliefs on, like,
mhm.
God's plan, but, I mean, just because I have the tendency toward alcohol or somebody else has a tendency towards other men. Like, we all have our tendencies and we all have our things
Mm.
that we're working on. So who am I to judge? And that's Pope Francis's words.
What's it like for you right now? I'm not sure exactly when this podcast will be released, but I just watched the movie Conclave last
Yeah.
night,
Yeah.
and the real conclave started today, the
Yeah.
day that we're recording this.
Mhm.
What does it feel like for you to have this process unfolding? You know, you liked Pope Francis, but now somebody completely different that could have slightly different leanings could be in that role. How does that
Yeah.
feel to you?
It's exciting for sure. I mean, when I came into the church 6 years ago, obviously Pope Francis was the pope. Loved him, and now I'm ready to see what the Holy Spirit invokes, and we just have to have faith that it'll be Holy Spirit led.
Freeman, I really enjoyed this conversation.
Not
I
as much
love
as
the
me,
fact
I
that you
promise.
I really appreciate that you would come on the show and have a conversation about these different things, be very open, honest about what this has been like for you.
Mhm.
For everyone that's listening, you can find Freeman's work at neutrality.com, and that is spelled with a K. So it's KNEUTRALITY,
Yes.
neutrality.com with a K, and also at Kneutrality across social platforms. Freeman, keep up the great work. I think
Oh,
you're
you
doing
as
something
well.
really wonderful, and I'm so grateful there are people like you out there that are trying to have meaningful dialogue, respectful, kind, compassionate
Mm.
kind of dialogue, even with people that they disagree with. That's something that I aspire to myself, and
You do a great job.
I really respect what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Vice versa, the feeling is mutual. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Clear and Loud podcast. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Our producer is Pam Cameron, and this episode contains music by Jeremy Yaddo at Music for Podcasts. If you like what you hear, give us a boost by subscribing or leaving a review on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen. We'd also love your feedback on today's episode. Or if you have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode or a guest you'd like us to consider, email us at hello@clearandloud.com. You can also shoot us a direct message on Instagram. Our handle is @clearandloud. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.